talks about the four paths in the Ihya. There's the paths of the dialectical theologian, the paths of the philosophers, the path of the Batini, the esotericists, and then the path of the Sufiya. These are the four paths of truth, the pursuit of truth. Now, when we say philosophy, it's important that you understand that for him, philosophy meant 6 things. Unlike today, we use philosophy today. We're generally talking about a history that begins with the pre-Socratics in Greece and ends with the positivists or the linguistic analyses, Wittgenstein, and now postmodernists, Foucault and Rorty and people like that. That's philosophy in the West. At that time, philosophy was mathematics, went under the riyadiyat, went under the category of philosophy, mantiq, logic, which is still considered a branch of philosophy. Natural science was part of philosophy. And then also politics was part of philosophy. What we call al-ulum al-siyasiyya today, political science, was actually a branch of philosophy, and it still is considered a branch of philosophy. But people don't think of it. Most students would not think of it in that way, but it still goes under that category. And then akhlaq, which is ethics, and then metaphysics. So to him, this was philosophy. So he included in this empirical sciences, empiricists that believe, like Dawkins is a philosopher. He's an empirical scientist, and he is creating views of the world that are based upon material sciences. And Dawkins is arguing that there's no God, and he's arguing from material sciences. And what he's saying is that even though we haven't fully explained everything in the universe, give us time. Have faith in us. Really, that's essentially what he's saying. He's saying we don't know how the universe began, but we'll find out, just like we found out how life began on Earth. It began with a lightning bolt that struck a pond of water and began this whole process, and these cells that developed out of that and then turned into all the various creatures that you had, and it was a long process of cause and effect, and you had natural selection, all these incredibly random events where things would die off because they couldn't survive, and you had the survival of the fittest. And so there's no real design. Design is just a trick. So don't think that you're designed. You just don't understand natural selection. You're not designed. You just happen to be the fittest to survive. So he would argue that that's true of the universe. And a lot of what they say is, for instance, they will say that, well, we don't know that there's not parallel universes. This could have been born out of another universe. So one of Dr. Winter's aphorisms, what does he call them? Contentions. One of his contentions is multiple universes is the last refuge of the atheist. Right? So he would see that as an attempt to find the truth. The dialectical theologians, proving the existence of God with the cosmological Kalam argument, you can't have an actual infinity. You can't have an actual infinity, and therefore there had to have been a first cause. There had to begin a beginning, and that first cause had to have been wajib al-wujub, necessarily existent, because the universe is only contingently existence. Accidents inhere in essences, and the accidents can't exist without the essence, and the accidents are changeable. Therefore, change is part of the universe. Change has no permanence. Therefore, the universe isn't permanent. So it can't be God, and it can't have created itself. If the universe made itself, then that would have meant that preponderance and equilibrium would have been equal, and that's the joining of two opposites, and that's impossible. You can't join two opposites. These are the arguments of the dialectical theologians. Imam Al-Ghazali mastered them and said, I'm sorry, they don't lead to truth. They don't. I'm not satisfied. We'll teach them. They're useful, but they're not going to give you that inner peace about God. And you can understand them and still not believe, like many people that teach these things in universities. And then he says the Batini people, they argue that there's this esoteric knowledge that's only available to a few people. And you just have to trust us. We're the special ones that have this knowledge, and just follow us and give us money usually, and we'll make sure that you're blessed and part of this group, and you'll get saved. And he writes a book against them, the Mustadharif, about the Ismaili heresy, and argues that again it's not a path to the truth for him. And then he looks at the philosophers and concludes that they have 20 mistakes. 17 of them are bid'ah, and they're not really cause for kufr, but 3 of them are cause for kufr, and he delineates those. They say God knows universals, doesn't know particulars, rubbish, and if you believe that, you're a kafir. They say that the body can't be resurrected, like a bodily resurrection. And then they say that the universe is coexistent and eternal with God. So he rejects all of those, and that's all delineated in Tahafut al-Falasifa. But then he says, I looked at the Sufiya, and I realized that their path was the path of truth. He has this realization, and it's firm in his heart. And so he sits there for 6 months, and he's saying, it's so easy for me to read their books, because he's an intellectual, and he loves reading. Just sit there, read Qut al-Qulub, but I'm not going to do any of this stuff, right? I'll just read about it. But then he realizes it's reading about it is not going to do it. It's not going to get me anywhere, because it's all up here. And he says this path is a path of suluk and dhawq. It's a path of practice, disciplined practice, and experience.